Hey guys, what's up? Thanks so much for joining me today. I wanted to talk to you about shadow work today. So, if you've been in the spiritual community for even just a short amount of time, chances are that you have heard the term shadow work. And it can sound a little intimidating, it can sound a little scary, and in some cases, it can be along the way, right? But I wanted to be fully open and transparent about what shadow work has looked like for me. It's going to look differently for everybody, right? Because everyone grows up in different circumstances and experiences different things. And so it's going to look very different across the board. But the reason that I wanted to be very open and about my personal experience is that my guess is that there are some people out there who can really identify with things that I've gone through, that I am personally working through as we speak. And some of those things have been addressed and squashed, like in a positive way, uh, within months, and some things are going to take longer to move on from, or really to work through. But um, so shadow work in the spiritual community really just means looking at the things inside of you that you look on with sometimes shame, regret, heartache, pain, um, the things about you that you wouldn't really put on a billboard. It's usually the things that you wouldn't post on your social media, and some of those things cause you to be stunted in certain ways in your growth, in your soul growth. Um, and so what has this looked like personally for me? So when I got into the spiritual community, I did not think that I was going to be going through it the way that I have, right? I was like, oh, this is amazing. We're going to practice like tapping into each other's energy and what's your aura color and blah, blah, blah. And there was some of that. But then suddenly I noticed that the first thing to come up was my insecurity, my lack of self-esteem, my perfectionism. And sometimes we don't really understand how early on in our lives those things became ingrained in us, whether through our own doing or often from the programming, the indoctrination from our family and friends and school and community, things like that. So in my case, I very early on was bullied heavily in school, starting in first grade all the way up through basically the end of high school. So I had very low self-esteem. Didn't feel like I had that ride or die group of friends that I always desperately wanted, right? Um, and so how did this manifest? Oh, and I guess it's important to say that I also had this nagging, this feeling growing up that within my own family that I was the black sheep, that there was something that I just wasn't fitting in correctly. Now, of course, I look at it and I'm like, I was actually the sparkly sheep. But I had like a lot of unrest within me. So it was difficult. I didn't feel fully accepted by others at home, but really within just from myself. And I was getting the same thing at school as well, right? So the way that this manifested, especially as I was a teenager, is I felt that the only way that I could get attention was physically. Um, and it came out just wanting attention from guys. And that went all through high school and college. This coincided as well with drinking. And, I mentioned it in a previous episode, but this past December, I celebrated 10 years of being sober and not drinking. And a lot of that was because the reason that I decided it for myself was that drinking brought out all of those insecurities within me. It didn't make things better. And so, yeah, I was always looking for the wrong, for the attention in the wrong places and attracting the wrong types of people, right? Um, and I honestly thought that that was going to go away once I got married. And being completely transparent and open, it did not go away when I got married. I thought that, the person who loves me, I'm going to feel secure and I'm going to feel safe, and now and I'm going to feel seen. And the thing is, I hadn't addressed all of the baggage that I had brought with me into the marriage, right? So, the way that that started to manifest, you could see it's like a snowball going down the hill and getting bigger and bigger, is looking outside of my marriage for validation from other people. And again, oftentimes that came out through looking to the opposite sex for validation and attention. And by the way, and the reason that I say this is because the handful of times that I've opened up about this part of my past, the people who I have told this to have all been able to resonate with it. So I'm not just flaunting this just because it's fun, because it's not. It's hard. It's not the stuff that you want everybody to associate with you, but I do know that I've grown so much as a person since this. So I'm very okay with talking about it. And my husband is as well. Um, and so, yeah, so I started to look for attention outside, and all the while having scrupulosity OCD, which I also mentioned previously. It's like the inability to be dishonest, because I would feel so guilty if I even told a white lie or even just omitted the truth. I would feel so anxious, borderline suicidal over these types of like dishonesty, right? Whew. So I, all the while that I'm reaching out to other people, like via text, just looking for attention, I would be telling my husband. And I can't even imagine how he dealt, how he coped with me being so open and honest about what I was going through and what I was doing. Um, Honestly, it's a bit of a mystery to me, even to this day. Um, but he had this feeling inside of him that he's like, no, I'm supposed to stay and I'm supposed to work with her through this. So, um, eventually we ended up going to marriage counseling, and honestly, it didn't stop there. I wish I could say that it did, but it manifested in all sorts of different ways, where I realized that, I don't want to ever make a decision that's going to sabotage my marriage again. That went, or I don't want to make a decision that will possibly sabotage my marriage, not again. But I was so nervous to make a mistake, and that is where I really lost trust in myself, because I always looked at myself as like, I would never look outside of my relationship. I would never hurt his feelings. I would never disrespect him. Um, and then I realized, oh my God, I'm human, and I did make that mistake, and I did hurt him, and I'm like a monster. What's wrong with me? And those thoughts started to then build momentum, to the point where I would go out with our then toddler to play places. And if I saw any guy, a dad, right, around that I thought was remotely attractive, or even if I didn't think that he was attractive, but someone who was nice to me, I would feel so guilty inside that to the point of almost being suicidal. I was so terrified to make a mistake and to put myself in the position of repeating history. It was a complete nightmare. Honestly, it really was. And um all of this led to me completely having a breakdown in 2020. Um and that's where I was hospitalized, because I had made the decision that I was going to go off of my medicine and I didn't need it anymore. And then I and Matt stepped up. He is like um he stepped up, he endured so much and supported me so much, and even before the meltdown, the breakdown, he would talk through my intrusive thoughts with me in the way that my therapist had. He When I was hospitalized, it's actually sort of funny, and so I guess I will talk about it. I was suicidal out of my mind. I was so desperate, so hopeless, and I I had told him, I was like, I have to go somewhere. I need medicine now, and I need help. So my sister took me to the hospital, but it was during COVID, so no one could go in with me. So I could barely speak. I was so upset. But I had to check myself in, and they ended up putting me in, like, literally, if you've seen Girl Interrupted, it felt like that. It was a wing of the hospital, and I had this little room with nothing in it except a plastic bed that I had to sit on, and there was one TV in the room, but the only thing is that it was broken. So it either had to be off or it could be on, but it was stuck on Guy Fieri's diners, drive-ins, and dives, or whatever it's called, and the volume was broken. So it was literally, it could only blast at like max volume, or it had to be off completely. And I needed something to distract me. So I ended up listening and watching Guy Fieri for like literally 5 hours, is how long they kept me in there without anyone seeing me, or asking me if I needed anything. Turns out that the hospital couldn't help me, that they didn't have a psych ward. This is just where they kept people who they thought were a risk for self-harm. And but they took my money, my copay. It was like 200 and something dollars, and they said, "Oh, well, we're just here to make sure if you needed to be admitted to like an inpatient, but we don't actually have any medicine to help you." So it was a very bad scenario. It was a very bad day, and Matt stepped up. Something about my husband, he hates paperwork. He hates being on the phone. He hates doing like that nitty-gritty research, and he, without batting an eyelash, and that's why I was getting emotional. It's over like it feels like the silliest little thing, but he stepped up and did all the research to find me the right doctor to get me in right away. He dealt with all the insurance stuff. When one doctor didn't work out, he found me another one. He was so supportive, and so he's like, literally, he's like a down my rock, down to earth, cool, calm, and collected. He is exactly who I needed, A, in life, but B, specifically for this time in my life, and it was really hard. Um, and then he would work through a lot of my intrusive thoughts with me. We both had been to therapy separately, to deal with anxiety and depression. And something that we learned was cognitive behavioral therapy. So working through the intrusive thoughts, like, what are you afraid of? Well, I'm afraid that I'm going to see somebody outside the house that I find attractive. And Matt would literally sit down with me and be like, okay, so then what? What if you do see someone who's attractive? And I was like, well, then I'm going to feel guilty. He goes, okay, well, why would you feel guilty? I'd be like, well, because I found them attractive. And then he would say, he said, I have to tell you, he said, Jen, I need you to know, I couldn't care less if you find somebody else attractive. He goes, the fact that there's like a squirrel outside collecting nuts, that is more interesting to me than you going and finding someone else attractive. He goes, and then one of his Mattisms, he's like, what do you think? I don't have eyes? Like, he's like, I see people who are attractive all the time. And he would always insert humor into every conversation, and that's what I respond to. Like, I need to laugh. And he was just like my savior specifically during that time, which was not like just a couple months. That was like well over a year of working through those really hard moments, right? So I apologize for being long-winded, but it was a really impactful time in my life and in our marriage. Um, and we are so much stronger for it now, right? But from those experiences came those parts of my shadow that start to rise up, especially when I was developing of course, I am still developing as a psychic medium, but in those early days of putting yourself in a scenario where you could be wrong, you could go into your left brain, right? Um, you might not be accurate. Through these new experiences, all these little old nagging beliefs about myself started to rise. And that related to I don't I can't trust myself. I don't trust my intuition. Am I really getting what I think I'm getting? It was, I don't make good choices. I feel I'm not enough, especially from the bullying and being kicked to the curb by guys in high school and college. It was, I'm not good enough. I'm not I'm not cool enough. I'm not intuitive enough. Even the step to be here talking to you, um, this whole setup, it took a lot of encouragement from other people to be like, no, you're good enough. Someone's going to want to know what you have to say. And so that's actually an example right now of how I'm doing the shadow work. I'm pushing myself outside of the boundaries of what I believed about myself and the things that I still sometimes believe about myself, those beliefs that I'm working on evolving into new beliefs, right? Um and yeah, so I'm just trying to think of where else I was going, with all this. All those things came up and I needed time. I ended up because of some of those beliefs taking time off of practicing mediumship because I was scared, because at the root of so many limiting beliefs, and I'll talk about this in the future, but is fear. The fear of looking stupid, the fear of being wrong, the fear of disappointing somebody, the fear of proving to yourself and other people that your negative belief systems are correct. Um, those those things do come up as you put yourself in new uncharted territory, right? So but I do notice, like, and especially those intrusive thoughts, I wanted nothing more than for those thoughts to go away, that I'm not good enough, and specifically memories. The way that those intrusive thoughts would come up now, even though I feel like, oh, I'm way more confident than I was. Oh, since getting into the psychic mediumship, which then it was like I've never even seen the movie, but like Narnia, it's like opening the door to so many more experiences and things like that. Um, I A lot of those intrusive thoughts have died down a bit, which is great, and because it takes time, right? But the way that a lot of my fears come up now are through bad dreams. And for 20 years, I have had dreams. And poor Matt, he's so sick of hearing about it, I'm sure. But it's always a guy, either from my past, well, it's always from my past, actually, who has kicked me to the curb, who I'm not good enough for. I'm not fun enough. I'm not pretty enough. And by the time I wake up, I am heartbroken. And this has been for 20 years. And I wanted nothing more than for these nightmares to go away. And then I saw like an Instagram post, and it was like those fears, those intrusive thoughts, those triggers from other thoughts, those things are going to keep coming around, and they're not going to go away. It's how we interact with those thoughts, right? So rather than the thoughts going away, healing, this shadow work, is like a spiral, an upward spiral. And you're going to experience the thought, and then you're going to have a little time of growth, of meditating, of developing new belief systems, and everything's great. And then, boom, you have another dream again. But this time, you're able to interact with that dream or that trigger differently. Maybe it might not even feel noticeably different, but there has been some time and some healing that is going by. And what I have heard that really gives me a lot of comfort is that when you have especially dreams, that is a way of like your spirit detoxing and healing and releasing these things, these ideas, these beliefs that are not for your greatest and highest good. So it's a way of like releasing, right? A release energy. So then you experience it just a little bit differently, even if you don't notice a difference. And then the more you're realizing, wait, hold on, this thought isn't going away. I keep having these awful dreams. And by the way, I am saying this from experience because just last night I had another dream. And the night before that, I had another dream. But I noticed that I wasn't waking up as heartbroken. And this is over time, of course. But like, that really made sense to me. I was like, so each time I have a bad dream, I get to look at it like an opportunity to see how far I've come. It's kind of like in the gym. So I have a background as a strength and conditioning coach. It's like you do 8-week cycles for like a back squat, and you do all this work, and you don't always notice all the benefits that you're gaining, the strength that you're gaining over time. But then at that 8-week mark, you get to like go for that 1 rep max and see if you've made any gains, right? And it might just be by 2.5 pounds, or it might be by like 50 pounds, right? But that is like that opportunity of coming back and reassessing and seeing how far you've come. It's like a for what do you call it? Like, it's like quantitative research. And so yeah, so I want you to know that people who have the YouTube channels, people who have the podcasts, who are really incredible, amazing people who talk about shadow work, especially the people who look like they have it all together, it's probably taken a lot to be able to talk about it. The people, I say the same thing about like anxiety and depression. It's oftentimes the people who don't look like they have a care in the world, who look super confident, who are the people who are kind of really going through something. It's just they have a certain amount of years under their belt where they've developed like the facade, the face, and it's usually a coping mechanism. At least that's my experience, right? So I wanted to talk about my experience in hopes that it'll reach even just one person where they feel like I'm not alone. And like that makes sense. Like the ideas of like the bad dreams, because often we're just like, why? I'm doing all the things that I'm supposed to do. I'm meditating. I'm taking time out in nature. I'm working out. I'm taking supplements. I'm eating right. I'm doing all the things that is supposed to be like helping me ascend, but I feel dragged down every time I wake up from like a horrible nightmare in like cold sweats. Like, what's the deal? But when you start looking at it when I started looking at it from the perspective of, oh, wait, hold on. Each time I have a bad dream, It's like I'm releasing some of that energy that was taking up space in my soul, in my light body. It's and dispensing it, and it's creating more space for the light to come in. I know that's a little froofy language, but that's really what it is. It's just like purging your closet. Make room for the new better stuff, right? Um, so I hope that this lands with you. Um, and and even if it didn't completely, you might know somebody who could really benefit from hearing my personal testimony about what shadow work has looked like for me. Um, and I'm just really grateful for all of you. If you wouldn't mind giving this video a like and hit the subscribe button. And if you have any questions, please feel free to write them down in the comments. And it might just be the inspiration for another video where I get the opportunity to support you. So I hope you have an amazing day, and keep doing the work. Even when you feel like you're not making progress, it's kind of like having a piggy bank and putting one quarter in it and then another quarter in it. You're like, oh, this is not building up. But then suddenly, after like a month or 3 months, you've got a lot of quarters in that bank, and suddenly you're seeing the progress. So it's worth it. And I encourage you to keep going, and just keep showing up for yourself. All right. All the best, you guys. Bye.